What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Children of the Corn, based off the Stephen King short story of the same name. This film is directed by Fritz Kurtz and written by George Goldsmith. Okay, let's waste no time. Let's make this review as short and sweet as possible. So, my overall thoughts on Children of the Corn is I thought this movie was decent. I thought this was okay. Now, I've never read the original Children of the Corn short story. I have no connection to it at all. I've only ever seen the movie once, and I thought it was all right. Upon rewatching it, it's just all right. It has some things that I overall liked in it, but overall, I thought Children of the Corn was just a paint by numbers, just by the bones movie. That doesn't make it bad, but it also doesn't make it anything memorable whatsoever. It does have an intriguing premise. I like the idea of Children of the Corn. The story and the movie drew a lot of inspiration from films like Children of the Damned, in which children are have this control over the adult population. I like that whole concept, but I just think that there are certain elements of this movie that could have been really, really good, but were only just teased or hinted at or not fully expanded upon. So, the overall premise of Children of the Corn is this enigmatic leader named Isaac, under the orders from this mysterious entity known as He Who Walks Among the Rows, convinces the children to kill the entire adult population of Gatlin, Nebraska, in order to ensure a successful corn harvest. We flash forward 3 years later, and this couple named Bert and Vicky, played by Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton, stumble upon Gatlin by a complete accident. So now Peter and Vicky have to try and find a way to survive and leave this town. So yeah, that's, like I said, that's the overall basic premise of Children of the Corn. Interesting in the fact that, a bunch of kids under orders from a demonic entity pretty much killed the entire population due to extreme religion. That's basically why it was done, through extreme religion. I like the movie's social commentary on that a little bit. I don't think it really did enough I don't think it really fully expanded upon that as much as it should have. Especially when you get to the end, when Bert does a rant about how the children perceive a religion, and how he's like, every religion needs to have compassion and love to it. What you believe in is nothing. You could have done more with that. Maybe have, because Paul's supposed to be a physician. Maybe also make him a very devout religious guy as well. There is a scene where Bert and Vicky are listening to a preacher on the radio, but they're just making fun of him. It would have been cool if one of them had some sort of religious connection, as a way, so that way their ideals can conflict with that of the children. I think it could be much more interesting in terms of that aspect. Another aspect that I think that could have been fully expanded upon, but was in this movie, but you could have gotten so much more out of it, was the conflicting views of Isaac and Malachi, who were played by John Franklin and Courtney Gaines, respectively. Isaac and Malachi are the two main children, and pretty much are co-leaders of the cult. Isaac being the one who started the children revolution against the adults, but then you have Malachi, who rose to power, and Malachi is more or less like the muscle. He's Isaac's muscle, and more or less right-hand man, but he has his own ideals that come into conflict with Isaac's ideals. And I think you could have done so much more with this if the movie was more or less about how these two have conflicting ideologies. Isaac, according to him, takes orders from He Who Must Walk Among the Roses, marching orders from him. So there are certain decisions that Isaac makes that don't mesh with Malachi. Example: there are these two kids named Job and Sarah, who are playing Monopoly and listening to music. Malachi catches them. He brings them to Isaac with the intent to have them be punished, but Isaac, doesn't do anything. This pisses off Malachi. He's like, "Wait, what are you doing? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing." But Isaac says, "Listen, He Who Walks Among the Rows has told me, these two should not be punished." this comes into conflict with Malachi. Like, we could have gotten more of that. This movie would be much, much better. Because the rivalry to me reminded me of a very warped version of Magneto and Professor X. Like, these two conflicting ideologies that just don't mesh with one another. Like, I could have gotten a whole movie of Malachi versus Isaac, and I think Children of the Corn would have been so much better off for it. And then you have Vicky and Bert thrown into the mix, and how they perceive religion against how the children perceive religion in general. That could have been a very interesting story just from that aspect alone. So yeah, like that's what I would have done. In terms of the overall cast of this movie, the actors who played John Franklin and Courtney Gaines, who played Isaac and Malachi, sorry, the actors who played Malachi and Isaac, Courtney Gaines and John Franklin, I thought did really, really good jobs. John Franklin as Isaac really gives him this, weird, enigmatic kind of quality to him. His voice is kind of grating to your ears, but he does come across as like this, as someone who's devout and clearly has a tight grip on this community, or so he thinks. On the other hand, you have Malachi, who is just evil, and Courtney Gaines plays him as such. And I thought Courtney Gaines came across as very, very intimidating as the character of Malachi. I actually liked his performance as Malachi. I thought he was pretty good. And then you have Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor herself, and Peter Horton as Vicky and Bert. They're not too bad. They're fine. I mean, at the end of the day, Vicky ends up being a damsel in distress as she's about to be sacrificed, and she has to be saved by Bert. But at least in the climax, they work together with the two kids, Job and Sarah, who are totally against Isaac and Malachi, and in order to burn the cornfields and to send back he who walks among the rows back to where it is it came from. I like how they all work together, and I like how some of the children are actually woken up by Bert's speech about how religion and how their sense of religion is completely warped and being manipulated by Malachi and Isaac, who are just bastardizing it. So I do like how some of the kids get some redemption near the end of this film. I overall think the climax of this movie is very, very hokey, very, very just typical Stephen King, where he has a good premise, he has interesting characters, he's got good build-up, but when it's time to pay off that build-up, it's just a letdown, or it's just completely just stupid. In this movie, so he who walks among the rows comes, he possesses Isaac, and then it's this big giant cloud starts to engulf the town of Gatlin, and is about to engulf everything in front of it. And so in a last-ditch effort, Vicky, Bert, Job, and Sarah work together to try and turn on this still in order to spread gas all over the cornfield to burn it up, and to send he who once remains back to where he came from. For the most part, the third act is well directed. It's got some good suspense, but the whole cloud monster looked kind of stupid, looked kind of hokey, and the effect is stupid and hokey. I think it would have been just more interesting if he who walks among the rows just possesses Isaac, which is what he does, and then Isaac starts to go on a rampage, and you got to work together to try and stop Isaac. I think that would have worked better. I mean, it still would have been hokey and ridiculous, but it would have been better than what we actually got when it pertains to the ending of this movie, is what I'm overall trying to say. But the movie does overall have its happy ending, and it's implied that Vicky and Bert would end up adopting Job and Sarah, who were left orphaned because of Isaac, since all the parents died. Okay, so with all that being said, those are really my thoughts on Children of the Corn. At the end of the day, I'm going to give this movie a solid 5 out of 10. It's got a solid cast. It's got pretty decent directing for the most part. The movie has some suspenseful moments. I would have downplayed a lot of the slasher elements and expanded upon more of the overly fanatic overall and the more of the horrific religion that this movie tries to explore. I would have did more of that, and I would do more of that, because I think that's the more interesting aspect of this film and story in general. But overall, I give Children of the Corn a solid 5 out of 10. It's not bad. It's a quick watch. It ain't boring, though it does drag in some parts. But it does have some really good suspensefully directed scenes. Specifically, one scene with this truck driver named Dahl, who's the only survivor in the community, but he gets killed off by Malachi. That entire sequence is actually really well directed. And there are also more well directed scenes. Like there's this scene of a kid running through a cornfield, and then he gets killed by Malachi. That's also a good directed scene. Like this movie has really good suspenseful scenes when it wants to be, when it wants to have them. So yeah, overall, 5 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.